Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. US President Joe Biden stays defiant as calls to him stepping aside grow louder and shriller within the party. Says Trump shouting distracted him, calls his debate against Trump a bad episode. Iran's moderate candidate Masoud Pezeshkian leading the tight runoff presidential race against his hardline opponent Saeed Jalili. UK new Prime Minister Keir Starmer to hold first cabinet meeting on Saturday vows to rebuild Britain. Likely curtains on Cristiano Ronaldo's international career as Portugal exit Euro in a penalty shootout against France. Spain win the battle of skill and stamina in a high-octane clash with Germany. And on to the details now. US President Joe Biden again called his debate against Donald Trump a bad episode. In a first interview following the presidential debate, Biden said that his shaky performance was due to poor preparation, exhaustion and illness. In an interview to ABC, he added that it was no one else's fault but his own and that he hadn't rewatched his debate performance. Biden's comments came in a clip of an interview that is being closely watched by Democrats concerned about the president's ability to serve another 4 years or beat Republican Trump in November's election after his faltering debate performance on the 27th of June.
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night. Well, a delegation of Democratic governors has met with Joe Biden following last week's debate performance that raised concerns about the U.S. president's mental fitness. Among them was California Governor Gavin Newsom, a longtime ally of the president. While Newsom's team says the California governor was there to stand with Biden, he's also seen as a possible replacement. DD India correspondent Ira Spitzer reports from San Francisco for more.
With simmering concerns over Joe Biden's lackluster debate performance, speculation continues to grow on who might step in if the 81-year-old president bows out of his re-election bid, even though he insists he won't.
To the state of
One candidate often mentioned is California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's made a name for himself with his fierce criticism of Republicans like former President Donald Trump.
The governor and his team have positioned himself as a national leading Democratic voice and figure, someone who won't take sand kicked in their face by Republicans.
However, it's another Californian who may stand in Newsom's way.
The problem is that his political cousin is the vice president of the United States, and that's Kamala Harris from California.
The vice president, whose mother was from Chennai, India, has faced questions about her viability as a candidate on the national stage. Still, her supporters believe that she should be first in line if Biden falters.
You know, listen, she's the vice president. She's a black woman. That's very important in the Democratic Party. It's very important to the Democratic voter base. She's been underestimated most for her life, and she's done very well for herself. And I think she'd still be a very formidable candidate if she was at the top of the ballot.
A dream built on pushing boundaries.
Polls haven't shown that the vice president is weaker than other candidates, like Gavin Newsom, but the situation may change rapidly. However, the challenge from Harris and other leading Democrats like Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer isn't the only issue for Newsom in a potential presidential bid. One of the biggest problems for the California governor is that the state he has led for the past 5 years is currently viewed negatively by many Americans due to issues such as homelessness and crime. However, at 56 years old, more than 2 decades younger than both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, Newsom may be well positioned to energize voters concerned about the ages of the current candidates. Ira Spitzer reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
Well, the U.S. says it will send more than 80 of its newest and most advanced fighter jets to Japan as part of a $10 billion modernization plan. The upgrade comes amid growing tensions in the region. Tony Waterman has more on this.
The Pentagon says it will deploy 36 F-15EXs and 48 F-35A aircraft at different bases in Japan. These are some of the most advanced fighter jets, not only in the U.S. arsenal, but in the world. The F-15EX has several superpowers. It is the fastest fighter jet in the world, and it can carry more missiles, up to 12 advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles. And those missiles can be fired accurately from a much further distance, helping to keep the jets undetectable and also the pilots safe. This transition to Japan, though, won't take place overnight. The Defense Department says it will take several years to rotate these fighter jets in, but officials say it's meant to bolster regional deterrence and strengthen peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, no country was named in the announcement, but experts say this upgrade is meant to send a message to China, Russia, and North Korea. Japan is locked in territorial disputes with Russia in the north and China in the East China Sea. North Korea has fired ballistic missiles over Japan and is stockpiling weapons. And Japan's southern island of Okinawa is only about 700 kilometers from Taiwan, which Beijing has said it wants to reunite with the mainland, even by force. Now, the U.S. maintains a very large presence in Japan. Roughly 54,000 military personnel are stationed there, which is the highest number of any overseas placements. Tony Waterman in Austin, Texas, reporting for DD India.
And amidst a tight race in Iran's runoff presidential elections, initial results show the low-profile moderate Masoud Pezeshkian in lead as the counting of votes is underway. Pezeshkian, who is ahead of hardline rival Saeed Jalili with 3 million votes, is expected to win the presidential race as per Iranian source. Polling ended at midnight in Iran after being extended for 3 times for a total of 6 hours. The Interior Ministry said initial reports showed the voter turnout was around 50% higher than the first round. The runoff follows a June 28th ballot with historically low turnout when over 60% of Iranian voters abstained from the snap election for a successor to Ibrahim Raisi following his death in a helicopter crash. And UK new Prime Minister Keir Starmer will hold the first meeting of his new cabinet on Saturday as he begins his tenure after a landslide victory. Keir got straight to work on Friday as he met King Charles and was formally named Prime Minister, assembling the country's first Labour cabinet in 14 years. The Prime Minister confirmed Rochelle Reeves as Britain's first women Chancellor and Angela Rayner as the Deputy Prime Minister. He pledged action to fix the country, not just words, and said that improvements would take time. The centre-left Labour won a massive majority in the 650-seat parliament. And early on Friday, ending 14 years of Conservative government, Labour Party surged to a landslide victory in a parliamentary election. Britain's Prime Minister-elect Keir Starmer pledged to rebuild the country by taking heat out of politics after years of upheaval and strife. This with the caveat that any improvements would take time and he would need the first rebuild faith in politics. On the other hand, Rishi Sunak took responsibility for his Conservatives' defeat. Here's a report by Faisal Ahmed.
Your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss. To all the Conservative candidates and campaigners who worked tirelessly but without success, I'm sorry that we could not deliver what your efforts deserved.
14 years of Conservative Party rule came to an end on Friday. Rishi Sunak's Conservatives suffered the worst performance in the party's long history. In his final speech as Prime Minister outside Downing Street, Sunak apologised to Conservative candidates and campaigners for not delivering a Conservative election.
But once the formal arrangements...
Sunak later met King Charles at Buckingham Palace to formally tender his resignation as Prime Minister of United Kingdom. Labour Party leader Keir Starmer met King Charles at Buckingham Palace. Britain's king asked Labour leader Starmer to form the new government. Britain's new Prime Minister, Starmer, promised to kickstart an era of national renewal.
But now our country has voted decisively for change, for national renewal, and a return of politics to public service. If you voted Labour yesterday, we will carry the responsibility of your trust as we rebuild our country.
Following Labour Party's victory, world leaders sent their congratulatory messages to Keir Starmer.
I will congratulate Keir Starmer on his election victory. I look forward to welcoming him and to meet him at the NATO summit in Washington next week. I have met also Keir Starmer here at the NATO headquarters, and I know that he's a strong supporter of NATO, of the transatlantic alliance, and also committed to ensure that the United Kingdom continues to be a strong and very committed NATO ally.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrote on social media platform X, "Heartiest congratulations and best wishes to Keir Starmer on the remarkable victory in the UK general elections. I look forward to our positive and constructive collaboration to further strengthen the India-UK comprehensive strategic partnership in all areas, fostering mutual growth and prosperity." European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen writes, "Congratulations, Keir Starmer, on your electoral victory. I look forward to working with you in a constructive partnership to address common challenges and strengthen European security." German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says Starmer will make an excellent Prime Minister. French President Emmanuel Macron took to X to congratulate the new British Prime Minister. He writes, "Congratulations, Keir Starmer, on your victory. Pleased with our first discussion. We will continue the work begun with UK for our bilateral cooperation, for peace, security in Europe, and for climate and for AI." Labour won over 410 seats, while the Conservative lost about 250 lawmakers, including a record number of senior ministers and former Prime Minister Liz Truss. While Scottish National Party posted its worst showing at a British parliamentary election since 2010, a major setback for its push for a new independence referendum. While Nigel Farage was elected to Parliament, marking the emergence of his populist Reform UK as a new force in British politics. Fuzail Ahmed's report for DD India.
And now an update on storm. Hurricane Beryl made landfall on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula on Friday morning after it ripped through Jamaica and the Caribbean early this week, leaving 11 dead as southern Texas and the Gulf Coast braced for its arrival this weekend. The core of the storm, downgraded from a hurricane, crossed the Yucatan Peninsula with its maximum wind speeds slowing to around 65 miles after striking near the coastal beach resort of Tulum. The storm, which at one point intensified to a massive Category 5 hurricane, left a deadly trail of destruction across the Caribbean earlier this week. Affected by Tropical Storm Beryl, tourists stranded at Cancun Airport, one of Mexico's hotspots. Passengers await their flights in long lines and corridors. According to local media, Cancun International Airport had 332 cancelled flights on Friday. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. France heads to legislative runoff election on Sunday as the country faces political uncertainty. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be on a two-nation official tour from 8th July to 10th of July. IMD issues red alert across 9 states in North India. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and moving on, France will head to legislative runoff election on Sunday as voters face uncertain political future. The leading far right is unsure to garner enough National Assembly seats for an absolute majority, which can result in a political deadlock. Marine Le Pen's Eurosceptic anti-immigration national rally topped the parliamentary election's first round, opening the prospect of the far right leading a French government for the first time since World War II. Very striving to impede the far right, France's political parties have scrambled to form alliances. Earlier, French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal and Culture Minister Rachida Dati joined a presidential party candidate on the last day of campaigning on Friday to drum up support ahead of a cliffhanger runoff. Parties across the political spectrum urged French voters to vote massively on Sunday.
The difference between us and the others is that we are not ready to promise everything and anything to be elected. If you listen to the opposition parties, we could reduce all the VAT rates, remove taxes, raise all spending, and do it all like magic. But in reality, these are lies. They are lying to the French. The day after will be terrible. Let me tell you, we are proposing a program that is credible, serious, and ambitious for the French.
Well, the far-right National Rally is set to be the biggest party in Parliament, based on the polls ahead of the second round of the French general election on Sunday. If they win an outright majority, France would have its first far-right government since the Second World War. But rival parties on the left and the centre hope their voters come together to block the National Rally's path to power. DD India correspondent Ross Cullen reports for more.
France is in uncharted territory. Following the first round of the snap general election, the far-right National Rally Party is now the dominant political force in the country, even if they do not secure an outright majority in the upcoming second round. Jordan Bardella, who is of Italian and Algerian descent, represents the new face of the National Rally. He's 28 years old, was raised by a single mother, and is popular on TikTok. But for Jordan Bardella to be Prime Minister, in the event that the far right wins an absolute majority, there would have to be a so-called cohabitation agreement of power sharing between him and the anti-far right centrist President Macron. And Emmanuel Macron's once powerful Renaissance party is fading from view, projected to come third in the second and final vote. The leftist coalition, the New Popular Front, came second in the first round of voting. Its politicians have ambitions of their own for the runoffs. Despite four parties jostling for space under one umbrella, the alliance aims to create an upset, win a majority, and install a left-wing prime minister. Although the financial markets rallied after the first-round election results pointed towards a hung parliament, the political climate in France remains tense, with the potential for anti-nationalist demonstrations if the far right do take power. Ross Cullen in Paris, reporting for DD India.
Well, Russia says its forces seized part of key Ukraine town of Chasiv Yar, where Moscow has been pressing for months. Chasiv Yar is near Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine. The claim from Moscow came just after Kyiv said Russian strikes on the industrial city of Dnipro had killed 5 people and wounded nearly 36 more, including a 14-year-old girl. In the meantime, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban called for ceasefire after talks with Putin in Moscow. Desha Chernyshova has more from Moscow.
Russian Ministry of Defense said Moscow now has the control over the Novi district in the city of Chasiv Yar in the Donetsk People's Republic. Russian armed forces have carried out 23 group strikes against military targets of Ukraine over the past week, and Moscow says Ukraine lost 1,300 soldiers over that period of time. In the meantime, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow is open to a political or diplomatic solution of the conflict in Ukraine, but ruled out the possibility of a ceasefire unless serious negotiations start. He said that any pause could be used by Kyiv to rearm. After the talks with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Moscow on Friday, he said Moscow stands for a complete and final end to the conflict. He noted that among Russian conditions is a complete withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from 4 regions Russia now claims as its own. Hungarian Prime Minister said Russia and Ukraine have very different positions. As earlier in the week he has traveled to Kiev, Orban said he discussed the shortest path to peace with Putin in Moscow. Dasha Chernysova in Moscow reporting for DD India.
And now moving to some other stories. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be in Russia on July 8th and 9th and hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin to hold the 22nd India-Russia Annual Summit. It will be Modi's first trip to Russia since Moscow launched its military offensive in Ukraine. The visit also follows Prime Minister Modi's re-election for the third consecutive term. PM Modi last visited Russia in 2019 for an economic forum in the far eastern part of Vladivostok. He last traveled to Moscow in 2015.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be on a two-nation tour from 8th July to 10th of July. He will be on an official visit to Russia on the invitation of Russian President Vladimir Putin on the 8th of July. Both the leaders will engage in bilateral talks and discuss a range of issues from defense, culture, regional and global developments. India and Russia share a cordial bilateral relation. The growing investment ties between both the countries stands testimony to the long-standing friendship of India and Russia.
India-Russia bilateral trade has seen a sharp increase in 2023-24. It has since touched close to $65 billion, primarily due to strong energy cooperation between India and Russia. With Indian exports of $4 billion and Indian imports being close to 60 billion, trade remains imbalanced, which is a matter of priority in our discussions with the Russian side.
The Prime Minister of India will start his second leg of the tour to Vienna, the capital of Austria, on 9th of July. This is the first Prime Minister level visit to Austria from India after a long gap of 40 years. India and Austria will be engaging in multiple bilateral and delegation level talks during the visit. The focus areas during the visit to Vienna are likely to be business, innovation and technology.
This will be Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi's first visit to Austria. The last Prime Ministerial visit, I must mention, from India to Austria took place more than 40 years ago. In terms of programming elements, the Prime Minister, besides the ceremonial welcome being accorded to him, would also call on the President of Austria and hold restricted delegation level talks, as also a high-level business engagement in Austria.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the two nations is going to strengthen ties between India and Russia, and the first Prime Minister level visit to Austria will further enhance the bilateral ties between India and Austria. With Dibendu Mondal, Tanvi Taneja for DD India.
And now some weather updates. The Indian Meteorological Department on Friday issued a red alert for extremely heavy rainfall in several states, including Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. A true from Rajasthan to the northeast and an active monsoon over northern West Bengal are likely to bring heavy rainfall in these states as well. According to the Met Department data, heavy rainfall in northwest and northeast India over the past few days has brought down the overall monsoon precipitation deficit in the country from 11% on June 30th to just 3% on Thursday. And on to some sports news now. Spain defeated host Germany 2-1 after extra time in a dramatic Euro 2024 quarter-final on Friday to set up a last-four clash against France. With the two sides level at 1-1 after 90 minutes, Mikel Merino struck the decisive blow for Spain in the 119th minute with a brilliant header to send his side through to the semis. Spain will now focus on recovering for Tuesday's semi-final against France, who won against Portugal after penalties. Meanwhile, later in the night, France downed Portugal on penalties in the second quarter-finals, following a goalless draw to set up a last-four meeting with Spain. And in Wimbledon Open, Jannik Sinner switched to cruise mode as the world #1 breezed past unseeded Serb Miomir Kecmanovic for a place in the fourth round on a damp Friday. A backhand rocket earned Sinner the early break and set the tone for the opening set, which he sealed in 21 minutes, dropping only one late game. Meanwhile, Kecmanovic came into the match with an uphill task, having never beaten Sinner in 3 previous meetings. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Kurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.